to this class, DIT2210, Internet Programming. I'm Madam Linda Sawe from the School of Computing and Informatics, Department of Information Technology. Today we are doing our lesson 1, which is an overview and fundamental concepts of JavaScript. Now, our lesson objectives for today are, by the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to define the basic concepts of JavaScript. You should also be able to identify the main features of JavaScript. You should be able to implement a simple JavaScript code. And then the learner should also know the data types that are supported in JavaScript. Then differentiate between the global and the local variables that are supported in JavaScript. Now, let's have a small introduction where we'll define a number of terms. The first term I want us to define is what is JavaScript. JavaScript is a dynamic computer programming language. It is a lightweight and most commonly used programming language to create web pages whose implementation allows client-side scripting to interact with the user and to make dynamic pages. Now, JavaScript is an interpreted language with object-oriented capabilities. Then JavaScript was first known as LiveScript, but Netscape later changed its name to JavaScript. Now, the general purpose core of the language has been embedded in Netscape browser, that is, Internet Explorer browser, and other web browsers like Mozilla and so on. Now, JavaScript has basic standard features. Now, the standard features are defined in ECMA 262 specification that defines the following features. One is that JavaScript is lightweight. It's interpreted programming language. Number 2 is that JavaScript is designed for creating network-centric applications. The third thing is that JavaScript is complementary to and integrated with Java. Java is another programming language. And then it's also complementary to and integrated with HTML, which is a common web application language. And then we have JavaScript is open and cross-platform, meaning you can use it with different platforms. Now, let's try to understand client-side JavaScript. Now, client-side JavaScript is the most common form of the language. This is the language that most of the web application developers use as compared to the client-side JavaScript. Then the script in JavaScript is included or referenced by an HTML document. So here it's simple. We will be embedding our JavaScript in a HTML document for the code to be interpreted by the browser. Then the JavaScript client-side mechanism provides many advantages over traditional server-side scripts. Then the JavaScript code is executed when the user submits the form. The form here is what the user is creating, and only if all the entries are valid, that is correctly implemented, they would be submitted to the web server. So this makes the process of executing a JavaScript code very fast, because before it's submitted, it has to be checked that the implementation is done well, and again, it is running okay and it's valid. Then JavaScript can also be used to trap user-initiated events like mouse button clicks, link navigation, and other actions that are user-initiated explicitly or implicitly. Now, what are some of the advantages of JavaScript? One is that it has less server interaction. This does what? It saves the server traffic, because reading and writing to the server takes a lot of time. So it's very important that we appreciate that JavaScript has a very less interaction with the server, which makes it or makes the content of a web page to load very fast. Then immediate feedback to the visitors of the website. Here, there is no wait for a page to reload for a long time. You only see your output immediately. You send or you submit a query to the server. Then increased interactivity. Interfaces can be created that react when the user hovers over them, or maybe a mouse is clicked, or maybe an activity is done on the keyboard. There is user interactivity here. Then we have richer interfaces. JavaScript allows you to create or to come up with good interfaces. Maybe you may have an interface that is more interactive, an interface that is user-friendly, so you get web pages that have a nice interface. What are some of the limitations of JavaScript? One is that client-side JavaScript does not allow reading or writing to files, external files in this case. Maybe you have embedded a file in your JavaScript code. Reading or writing to that file is not accepted. This is done for security reasons, basically. Then number two limitation is that JavaScript cannot be used for networking applications because there is no such support available yet. So JavaScript is not still supported for a networked kind of application. Then JavaScript does not have any multi-threading or multi-processing capabilities. So it cannot support several threads running at the same time, or multi-processing capabilities where you can have several processes running in different computers at the same time. Now let's look at a simple JavaScript syntax. And JavaScript is implemented using the JavaScript statements that are placed within the script tag. Now note here, the script tag comes in pairs. We have the opening script tag and the closing script tag that has a forward slash there. And it's put inside a HTML web page. So it's embedded inside a HTML web page. Now, the script tag containing your JavaScript code, your code will be put inside this script tag. So the script tag containing this JavaScript can be placed anywhere within your web page, but it's normally recommended that you should keep it within the head tags in your HTML web page. Now, the script tag alerts the browser that you are about to start interpreting all the text between these tags as a script. So it just tells the web browser to know that there is a JavaScript code that you're going to put inside the two or the pair of that script tag, which is the opening and the closing tag. Now let's look at a simple JavaScript syntax here represented. You see, you start with the script tag, you put your code here, and then you close the script tag. Remember, this is not standalone again, it's embedded in a HTML code. Now, the script tag takes two important attributes. The first attribute is language, and the second attribute is type. Now, what goes into language? Language is an attribute that specifies what scripting language you are using. Now, typically, its value will be JavaScript because we are using the JavaScript language. Now, although recent versions of HTML have XHTML, it is being phased out slowly in that case, so you can use XHTML in that attribute of language there, or you can just define it as JavaScript. Then for type, this attribute is what is now recommended to indicate the scripting language you're using, and the value can be set to text and JavaScript. We will see it here. You see now we are defining the script language attribute. We are putting it to be JavaScript, and type is text or JavaScript, and then the other code will appear here, and then you have the end or the ending tag of the script tag. Now, we have our first JavaScript code here. We will consider a sample example to print the word hello world on the screen. Now, note here that we are embedding it in HTML. So we have the HTML opening tag and the HTML closing tag. Then we have, our HTML structure generally has a head and the body. In this case, we are putting our JavaScript code in the body. So we have the opening body tag and the closing opening tag here. Note that closing tags have a / before the tag itself. Then we have the JavaScript. We've said JavaScript code is put inside the script tag. We have the opening script and the closing script tag. Now, here we have said script takes two attributes. We have language and we have type. So language here is set as JavaScript, and type here is set as either text or JavaScript. Then we have a new function called document.write that writes a string on the screen. We will we'll explain it here. We have a function called document.write that is used in JavaScript that writes a string into your HTML document. Now, this function can be used to write text, HTML, or both on the screen. Now, this code will produce what result? The output will be the words hello world on the screen. As you've seen here, you have document.write, the string in double quotes here of what you want to appear on your screen. So this is simply a simple JavaScript code. And when you're doing this, you type this in a notepad or in any word editor or any text editor. You save it with a .html extension and then open it with your browser. You will see the words hello world typed there on the screen. Now, what are some of the rules that we have to follow when writing our code in JavaScript? Now, let's look at a rule that concerns white spaces and line breaks. Now, white spaces are basically blank spaces in your code. And then line breaks here are new lines that appear in your code. Now, JavaScript ignores any spaces, tabs, or any new lines that appear in the code. Then spaces, tabs, and new lines are freely used you can use them freely in your program so that you are able to format and indent your program in a neat and consistent way that makes the code easy to read and understand. Now, a very important feature about any programming tip, or as you write any program, it's good to have your programs neat. It's good to have a consistent way of formatting your program. So you can use the white spaces and line breaks because they don't mean anything in JavaScript. You can use them freely because they will not have any effect as the code is executed. So that's the rule that we have for white spaces and line breaks. Know that they will be ignored, so you can use them freely to format your program structure. Number 2 rule is a rule concerning semicolons. Now, semicolons are optional. As you know, in any programming language like C, C++, and Java, semicolons are used or generally are very important. You can use them before or after a variable. You can use them after a statement. But in the case of JavaScript, semicolons are optional. They allow you to omit, you can omit them, you can have them in each of your statements as long as you wish. So this is optional. It's not like a rule like in any or in other programming languages like C or C++. You know, when you miss a semicolon in those other languages, you may end up in having a syntax error. But for JavaScript, semicolons are optional. You can omit them, you can have them. Rule number 3, there's a sample code here of using semicolons and not using a semicolon in a JavaScript code. In the first case, we are seeing JavaScript code without a semicolon, where we have our scripting tags there, the script with the language attribute and the type attribute, as we have already seen. Then we have 2 variables being declared here. We have var1 and var2, and then Each of the variables is given a value there. We have 10 and 20, but we are not using a semicolon in the first example. But in the second example, you see that a semicolon is introduced to separate the first variable from the second variable. You see here we have var1, which is initialized with a value of 10, and then a semicolon is used to separate it from the second variable, which is initialized with a value of 20, and a semicolon is used. So note again that semicolons are optional. You may decide to use them or not. The third rule, or the other rule, is that JavaScript is case sensitive. When we say case sensitive here, we mean that keywords like variables, function names, and any other identifiers that you may be using has to be typed in a consistent capitalization of letters. Meaning, you don't decide where to put your capital letter anyhow. No. Those will be treated like two different, or with two different meanings in JavaScript. We have an example here of an identifier time. Time with capital T and the rest all small, and then we have time in all capital. These two identifiers will mean or will convey a different meaning in JavaScript. So it's good to know how you are dealing with your capitalization to avoid referring to an identifier in different capitalization ways. So it's good to note that you have to put the capital letters in the right place. You have to put your small letters in the right place to avoid that confusion. Now, the other rule is about comments in JavaScript. Now, you know that comments are very important in any programming language, as they provide that information that may not be found immediately on your code. So it helps any person reading through your code to know what each of the statements in the code is doing. So in this case, JavaScript supports both the C and C++ style of commenting. Now, as we do this unit, it's assumed that you have already done C and C++. That's why you see we keep comparing the two, or comparing or referring JavaScript to the other two. As you know, C and C++ supports a number of styles that are used for comments. The first one is that any text that appears after two double slashes is treated as a comment to the end of that line. So anything that comes after the two slashes is treated as a comment until you finish that line. But when you move to the next line, the comment is no longer active, or the comment symbol is no longer active. That's the first way, and JavaScript also supports this. And you know comments are not executed, they are ignored. So anything that comes after these two double slashes will be treated as a comment. Then any text that comes between this slash and an asterisk, which has to end also with an asterisk and a slash, is treated as a comment. Now, this may span over multiple lines. Unlike the previous one, the double slashes appear only in one line. This other way of commenting spans through several lines. So you can have your comment going from one line to another as long as you have not closed the comment. Then the third way is using the less than sign and an exclamation mark, and then also closing it with a double slash. This will be treated as a comment, and JavaScript treats this as a single line kind of comment. Then the next one is that the HTML comment closing sequence, you can close with that two slashes and a greater than sign. JavaScript will also recognize it as a double slash like that, with two dashes and a greater than sign. So comments are basically supported in JavaScript like in any other programming language. Then we have a sample screenshot of a code of JavaScript on how comments can be implemented. We have the script, the language here we have is JavaScript, type is text or JavaScript. Then we have this first way of commenting. We have this second way of commenting, the third way of commenting that spans through several lines, and then this is closing for that. So it's important to know those ways of commenting. Then how do we enable JavaScript in web browsers? Now, good enough, all modern browsers today come with built-in support for JavaScript. So you may not need to enable it, you may not need to activate it. It's already there, or it's already supported or enabled, so you don't have to do it manually. However, it may be good to just have a code that will be in the NoScript block so that it can be executed in case your browser doesn't support. You know, again, user friendliness is very important. So you would not want a person or a programmer writing code or JavaScript code and then it's not running and they don't know why. So it's good to have the NoScript code that is put within the NoScript tag that will be executed in case JavaScript is not enabled in your web browser, or in case JavaScript is maybe not supported by your browser. So the NoScript code will just be put anywhere in your script, and you will have the NoScript code and then maybe a message that will be displayed. Like, for example, here we have, sorry, JavaScript is needed to go ahead. So that is a message that is given to the person who is doing the coding, and then you end the scripting code. Again, most of these tags come in pairs, the opening tag and the closing tag, and then the content of the tag. Again, this is placed inside a HTML code here, or HTML web page here, and it's put inside the body. Not all our scripts come inside the body tag. Then if the user's browser does not support JavaScript, or JavaScript is not enabled, then the message from the NoScript tag will be displayed on the screen. In this case, we will see, sorry, JavaScript is needed to go ahead. Now, where can we place our JavaScript? I've kept talking about putting it in the body, but there are other 4 places you can put your JavaScript code. Now, JavaScript code can be placed anywhere in an HTML document, so we need to appreciate that. HTML here is one of the very common web application language, so it's good to note that we are putting it anywhere. Now, a JavaScript cannot stand alone. It has to be put or embedded in another document. In our case, it's an HTML document. So the first place, or the most preferred ways are, one is the script in the head. This is the head section. Again, head comes with the opening head tag where you will put your script, and then the closing head tag. Then we have a script in the body, again inside body, as we've seen in our previous examples. Then we can have script in the body and the head sections, and then we have script in an external file, and then you can include that file in the head section. We'll start with how to implement JavaScript in the head section. Now, this is used when you want a script to run on some event, such as when a user clicks somewhere. So this is a script that you want it to ride on an event, like a mouse click, maybe a mouse move, and such like things. Now, we have a simple implementation here of putting JavaScript in the head section. Again, we have our HTML document here, starting with HTML, ending with HTML there. And then we have the head and the head there. Head opening, sorry, and the head closed here. Then we have our script is placed in the head section. Now, what is our script doing here? The type language is not defined. Type is defined as text or JavaScript. And then now we have a function called say hello. We are defining a function here called say hello, and it will give you an alert of hello world when that function is executed or called. Now we come, that is in the head section, our script is closed. Then we now come to call the function. Now, the function is called in the body section, whereby we are saying on clicking on the say hello function, which has an alert of hello world, what will happen? There is a value that says say hello. The output of this snapshot, or the snapshot of the code, will be a small button here that has say hello. When you click on it, it will type or print on the screen say hello. That is the first way of implementing it. The second way is in the body section. Now, this is what we have been looking at in our previous examples. This is used when you need a script to run as the page loads. So as the page is loading, you know anything you put in your body will be displayed. It will give you the feel and will be displayed immediately the page is loaded. So this is where you use the body, or where you put your JavaScript inside the body, and the page will generate the content as it loads. So in this case, you don't have to define any function using JavaScript like we did in the previous example. So you see here we have HTML, the head section is empty. We are not putting anything in the head. We don't need to define anything. Then we go to the body, and then this is where our script is. And then here we have the type of our script, or the type of our script here is text or JavaScript. Then we are using the document.write. I said earlier that document.write function is used to write something on the screen. In this case, it's hello world. It will type this string on the web browser there, and then we end our script, and then we have a small paragraph there that is written, this is web page body, and then you end body and end HTML. So this, you see our script is inside body. Our script is simply writing the string hello world in the screen. And the output here is hello world. And then this is web page only. As we had seen in our previous slide here, we had document.write. The screen hello world will be typed. And then we have a small paragraph here. This is a web page body. This is indicated here. This is web page body. Then the third way is putting the script in the body and head section. Now, you can put your JavaScript in the head and body sections all together. Now here we have our, like just in our previous example, we have the HTML head is defined here. We have the opening and the closing of head, and then the script is placed here in the head section, where we have a simple function called say hello, and then the alert is hello world on the screen, and then we close the head, we've defined our script, and then we go to the body again. We have the document.write statement here, the function for having the string hello world on the screen, and then you attach the script that we have defined up there, that on click, the say hello function will be executed, and we will have say hello. Now, the output here, we will have hello world, which is done with inside the body, and then the say hello button is what we had defined up there in the head section, this one. And this will have, when you click on that button, it will give you the alert hello world on the screen. Then we have the last way of implementing JavaScript is in an external file. Now, you can have your JavaScript created in an external file. Then what you will simply do is just embed that file or capture that file in your JavaScript code. Now, the script tag provides a mechanism to allow you to store JavaScript in an external file and then include it in your HTML file. So you can create a big file, store it with a .js kind of extension, and then you can use this file inside your HTML document or your HTML file. Now, below is an example to show you how to include an external JavaScript file in your HTML code using the script tag and its SRC. SRC here is source attribute. Now, let's look at that example in detail. We have the HTML tag as usual, the opening and the closing to tell the browser that this is a HTML kind of document. We have the head. Here in the head section, we are defining our script. Our script is type text or JavaScript. SRC here is the source of our external file. Where is our external file stored? Then we have the file name, and note that it has a .js kind of file extension to mean it's a JavaScript file. And then you close the script. That is how that will be implemented, and then you can put anything else you wish in the body section, and then you close. Now, to use JavaScript from an external file source, you need to write all your JavaScript source code in a simple text file. You can even do it in Notepad. You can do it in any simple text editor that is supported in your computer system. And then ensure that it has a .js extension, so that when you call it, or when you pull it, or when you link it to your HTML document, it's able to understand that this is a JavaScript code. So it's good to do that, and then include that file as it is shown above here. You can call it maybe my first, or maybe you can call it hello.js. It has to have a JS extension. Now, let's move on to JavaScript data types. Now, as you know, every programming language handles or processes a type of data. These types of data are defined as data types in this case. Now, a data type is basically the type of value that can be represented and manipulated. In this case, it's in JavaScript. So we will look at what values JavaScript can manipulate, or what values JavaScript can represent. Now, JavaScript supports 3 primitive data types. We have numbers. Numbers here are things like 1, 2, 3, or numbers that even have decimal places, among others. Then the second data type supported by JavaScript is strings. Strings here is strings of text, like this is a text string. Hello world, those are what we are calling strings in that case. And then we have Boolean kind of values. Yes, no, true, false, values that take either one or the other. So JavaScript also defines 2 trivial data types. We have 2 others. We have the null and the undefined kind of data type, which each one of those takes a single value. Then we have that JavaScript also supports a composite data type known as object. You know what objects are. These are real-world entities that can either be living or non-living, that can be represented with some attributes. So JavaScript also supports this data type that we are calling object. Now, something to note about JavaScript. JavaScript does not make a distinction between integer values, which we are calling numbers in this case. It takes both numeric values that are complete integers or floating points, meaning those that have decimal places or whole numbers are all treated as numbers. So it's just good to note that. And like other programming languages, we have floating point numbers, we have integers, there is no distinction. JavaScript groups all these types of integers as numbers in this case. Then all numbers in JavaScript are represented as floating point numbers. Now, what about JavaScript variables? Variables are named containers. So every programming language must have a variable. A variable is simply that space in the computer memory that is reserved to store a certain value or to store a certain data type in this case. So variables are named containers, which are used to store data, which can later be referred to in your program. Now, before you use a variable in JavaScript or any other programming language, you must declare it. So it's important to note that you have to tell your browser that this is a variable that I'm going to use. That informing is what we are calling declaring a variable. Then variables are declared with the var keyword in JavaScript. So we use that keyword var to tell your browser as it is running, or to inform your browser here that this is a variable. So it's important that you use the keyword var, and then the name of the variable follows. And there is a simple example given to us here, where we are defining 2 variables, var money and var name. You note that every variable is defined with the var keyword and then the name of the variable you're giving. In this case, we have money and name and then a semicolon at the end. Again, remember in JavaScript, semicolons are optional, so you can choose not to have them or have them. Now, you can also declare multiple variables within the same var word, but you have to separate it with a comma. Here, you see we have defined each one of them independently, but you may decide to use one var keyword and then separate the two different variables here, money and name, in a comma. So that is done there. Now, variable initialization involves storing a value in a variable. Now, in our previous example, what we have done is just declaring a variable. We have just declared a variable, but we have not initialized that variable with any value. But you may decide as a programmer to initialize your values with a value, or initialize your variable with a value. Now, variables can be initialized during declaration or at the time when you need to use the variable. So you may do it during declaration as you're declaring the variable, or you may do it within the place where you want to now use the variable. Now, we have a simple example of how to initialize variables given to us here. We have our two variables. In the previous example, we had declared two variables, name and money. So we want to initialize the variable name with Ali. So we are seeing here that we are declaring the variable var name and then initializing. You initialize using the equal sign and then what value you're giving to that particular variable. In our case, our variable is a string, so we are putting it in double quotes and then giving it the value Ali. We are also seeing another way of doing initialization, but not at the declaration point. We are declaring our variable var money, and then on the next line, we are initializing money by 2,050 cents. You see this? So these are the two ways you can do variable initialization. You can do it at the declaration point, or you can just simply declare the variable and then in the next line or somewhere you want to use this variable, you now initialize. You don't have to use the var keyword again, no. It's already known that you have a variable called money, so you're simply assigning a value to it using the equal sign, which is the initialization and the value. Now, this is a very important thing to note and know that you don't have to do the var keyword again. So you use the var keyword only for declaration. Once you have declared a variable, you don't have to keep using the var keyword again. What you can simply do, you can initialize it with a value and avoid declaring a second variable. Now let's look at variable scope in JavaScript. When we talk of scope here, it's simply the region in your program that a variable will be in use or a variable will be defined. Now, JavaScript supports two scopes. We have a global variable and a local variable. Now, a global variable here is a variable that has a global scope, which means it can be defined anywhere in your JavaScript code. And then we have a local variable here, which is only visible within a function where a variable is defined. So you can define a variable with either scopes, either local or global. Global will make that variable available throughout the program, but for a local variable, it will only be available within the block where it's defined, in that case, within that function. Now, our function parameters are always local to a function, so it's good to note that. Now, within the body of a function, a local variable usually has a higher precedence over a global variable. So if it happens that you are referring to a similar variable that has already been defined as a global variable and is also defined as a local variable, local variable will take precedence in a function compared to a global variable. Then if you declare a local variable or function parameter with the same name as a global variable, you effectively hide the global variable. This is just a reinforcement to the previous statement that a global variable is may not have a higher precedence as compared to a local variable within a function where that local variable is defined or declared. Then let's look at some of the variable naming conventions. As we've seen, when you're declaring a variable, you will use the var keyword, the name of the variable, and then it's good to know then how do you name variables. So there are rules of naming variables, and you have to keep them in mind when you're declaring or giving names to your variables. So the first one is that you should not use any of the JavaScript reserved keywords. There is a list of keywords that I will provide later in the lecture, in the class, but it's good to know that there are some reserved words which we are calling keywords that you cannot use anyhow. So as you're naming your variables, it's good to have in mind these keywords that are reserved that you may not use anyhow. There are examples that are given here. We have break, we have boolean. These are reserved keywords that you may not use anyhow in your naming of variables. So it's good that you know that you will get an error when you try to execute your code because you have, or you're using words that are reserved that may not be used anyhow. The second rule is that your variable name should not start with a numerical value. A numerical value is any value between 0 to 9, or even any value like that is a number. So you cannot start your variable name with a number, but you can use it maybe at the end. Maybe you can have something like maybe name 1 or name 2 and so on. That is acceptable, but you cannot start with a numerical value. You can also not start with an underscore character or any special character. You cannot start a value with that. It will be an invalid variable name. Then JavaScript variable names are case sensitive. It is good to know that variable names are case sensitive. For example, name with a capital N and name with all small are two different variables. So it's good to note that we have said earlier before that JavaScript is case sensitive. So the same thing applies to the variable names. When you're giving variable names, you note that the way you are capitalizing or defining your variable names, you have to be consistent to avoid getting errors. Now, we have talked of reserved keywords in JavaScript. So what are JavaScript reserved words? Now, a list of reserved words in JavaScript are given in the following table. They cannot be used anywhere or anyhow in any JavaScript program unless you are trying to refer to that keyword. So it's good to note that JavaScript words are, or JavaScript reserved words cannot be used anyhow. They can also not be used as variables. They cannot be used as functions. They cannot be used as methods. They cannot be used as loop labels or any object. So it's good to note that you cannot use these reserved keywords anyhow or for any, to refer to any variable in your program. So this is a simple list of all the reserved keywords. I'll just mention a few. We have abstract, we have else, we have int, we have interface, we have long, we have package. They all have an interpretation. They all have what they are doing in your program. So they are reserved words, meaning they are already known or they are already defined in your program. So when you try to refer to them, the browser will simply know what is this supposed to do. So these are just but a small, a screenshot of all the keywords that we have supported in JavaScript. And I've just mentioned a few. We have float, for, if, go to, else, and so on. So that's the end of our today's lesson. Thank you.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.